Okay. Just to remind you that tonight's workshop is being recorded, and you would have all, I guess, had a chance to look at the website with the footage from the council meeting. So, just to remind you that it's on. The microphones are just there and there, so it should pick up everyone's discussion today. Just want to welcome Anna here, who's note-taking on behalf of Kerry, who's gone home sick today. And so thanks for coming along, Anna. We have a number of other guests. We have people in the gallery from the department. Mark Williams is the Director of Sustainable Transport Policy and Planning, sitting over here. And Colin Marr is the Senior Planner. We also have Anders sitting over there, who's been working on the project that we're about to discuss. But I'll get Alex to just do the brief introduction if you like.
Yeah, sure. So DIPTI have approached us regards to talking to us about a strategic approach in terms of what to do with Vaughan Road, and more importantly, I guess, look at ways that we can improve, I guess, how do we transform Vaughan Road into more of a bicycle-friendly network, I guess. So I'll hand over to Andy.
Yeah, so just invite Colin and Mark Cross to talk through what that envisages for the Vaughan Road Bike Boulevard. Prospects being earmarked over two boulevards. One is St. Peter's, the Fuller Road Boulevard, and then Vaughan Road, the other one. So just going to talk through DIPTI's involvement, Prospects level of commitment, as well as how the Vaughan Road Bike Boulevard ties into the larger network. So,
I'd like to come forward to the...
I'll just start off tonight doing the first part of the presentation and hand over to Colin. What I'm going to cover is there's a few objectives for tonight, some information about some of the strategic context of why we're here tonight and why we're looking at the bicycle boulevards. Colin's then going to go into more detail about what it actually is a bicycle boulevard. It's going to be a new concept for Adelaide as we start to roll these out. Colin then covers some of the budget that we're talking about tonight, the scope of works, and the timings that we're considering at the moment. Just a bit of introduction. I look after our strategic transport planning area for public transport and cycling and walking. Colin works for me in that area, so we have a lot of involvement in the broader strategic planning role. I work alongside our road colleagues as well. The strategic plan is indicated as one of the, it's priority number 2 within the strategic plan. More people cycling safely more often in South Australia, with an aim to double the cycle trips by 2020. That's one of the new targets that got included in the strategic plan during its last review.
How are we going with that, Mark?
I'm sure the latest stats, I think we're increasing, but how we're achieving 2020, I think we still have a long way to go on that. Primarily, a lot of projects are now coming to fruition, especially the GREMO projects are now reaching the point of actually being open to being utilised, and so encouraging. But I think there's positive signs out there at the moment.
Okay.
But what we're going to do is do more and keep looking at different dimensions. The draft integrated transport and land use plan came out in the last year. Talked at the strategic view about the cycling interventions, including the bicycle boulevards. So that was certainly our major last piece of work out of government, was that land use plan. It still hasn't been finally issued by government. Instead, we had about 2,500 comments from that draft plan that went out. It's probably the biggest response we've had from any consultation on any plan Staken was done. So it's certainly far more comments from the community, from councils, from stakeholders, and even the 30-year plan. So an important document. It's probably one of the key documents that will guide our planning for the future. So it covers a lot of transport interventions over the next 30 years. And it covers the road network, public transport, ports, so broad-ranging issues. Also, it integrates very closely with the 30-year plan objectives of the high-density developments on various corridors. I'm sure you've all been much debate about those. So this is all part of an integrated strategy. There's probably 3 levels cycling intervention that's been done over the past number of years. The first has been bike lanes on arterial roads, which would have started probably 20 years ago. The bike lanes, that's been an ongoing process of rolling those out. Still controversial. Radio and the network, Brighton Road is one we're looking at the moment, and Glenosmond Road, two examples. Portrush Road. Over the past 3 years, the development of greenways has been an important element. A strong focus on the greenway down between Adelaide and Merino, down towards the south. Some work on the port or the Outer Harbour Greenway, especially going through behind places like St Clair, the development of St Clair areas, and a few local areas through Port Adelaide. Some work on the Northern Greenway. There's still, I think, a lot to do on the Greenway development, but they're generally your off-corridor cycling facilities, so with some local road access. The next one we'll be moving to is now at the bike boulevards, which are using the local roads more, trying to get local roads more cycle-friendly and calming them down. In the thinking that went into the map on the side there. As you can see, that's the map on the right-hand side. The green are basically the key greenways. The blue are what we talk about the bicycle boulevards. There are a number of these were identified during the planning work over the past couple of years, and they're all options that could be looked at. You can see we have ones heading down south. There's Grant Avenue, William Street, Beulah Road. Heading north and one out to the airport. So a range of potential options were identified, linking Mornings at the City of Adelaide. These were all put up as options through our planning process. Earlier in the year, the funding became available through the Motor Accident Commission funds, so all the funds go into that. Some funds out of that were allocated to road improvements, road intersections, other improvements on the road, but also bicycle boulevards, as well as interventions. So out of that, there was only a certain amount of money was available. It was determined that two would be selected for the first candidates of those. That included the Beulah Road and the Brown Road boulevard that we're talking about today. So that's actually context.
Well, what's that other top blue one, mate? Braun Road and the one on the other side. The two coming from north.
That's the Level City Bikeway.
What, sorry?
That's a route that's currently signed as we're calling the Level City Bikeway. It connects Mawson Lakes with the city, passes briefly through Prospect Council along Galway Avenue.
Yep.
This year, the improvements we're doing to that route are a new signalized crossing at Northeast Road in front of the ABC headquarters.
Right.
But it's not a route that we have funding to fully develop.
Okay.
Now I had to do a bit more of the detailed discussions about what this actually means at a local level.
So at the same time, we're doing planning at the state level. It complements the plans at the local level. We've used Prospect's local area bicycle network review as one of the documents guiding the development of this draft integrated transport land use plan. One of the things that the report identifies is improving Braun Road, being that it's one of the more popular cycling routes in the city of Prospect, especially used by a wider range of people riding, older people, younger people, women, children, more so than just the confident cyclists, primarily male, who are willing to use the bike lanes on arterial roads. So another focus is we're trying to get our numbers up to double number of people cycling. The way we're measuring that in the inner suburbs is cordon counts, number of people cycling in and out of Adelaide. Those numbers have grown by about 75% over the past 10 years. We'd like to get it to double, get 100% growth over the next 10 years. And when we look at where people are coming from to the city, it's our strongest bike commuting in the metro region is to the east and to the south. What we're really trying to do is improve the network to the north and to the west of the city to use those numbers of people. So what is a bicycle boulevard? Bicycle boulevard is not what it's not. It's not bike lanes. It's cycling routes that follow low traffic streets. It involves improvements to the roadway to create a shared environment that brings travel motor vehicle speeds down, where people cycling can feel comfortable sharing the road with cars. It involves traffic calming. It involves advisory markings for bicycles, like shown in the photo. And in general, what we're trying to do is create a route, a local street that prioritizes through travel by bicycle while still maintaining access for residents. So it's not getting rid of cars, it's not getting rid of parking, it's just improving the road where people feel comfortable sharing the road with both bicycles and cars. And also, importantly, it's improving the arterial road crossings so that those local roads can serve as routes that cross council boundaries and cross across busy roads. So here's some photos of what bicycle boulevards can potentially look like. Again, it's simply local streets. It's improved wayfinding signage. This is an example of signage we're using along Marina Rocks route. It's traffic calming treatments, and we determine those traffic calming treatments through community consultation.
This question on that top one, left-hand one. So that means if I'm a car coming behind all those people, I have to give way to them all.
The advisory markings don't have a legal meaning. There are no different give-way requirements. It's simply to highlight the presence of cyclists.
So they are required to pull aside whilst the cars coming past?
Nobody's required to do anything.
That means they can hold the whole road and cars will have to pile up behind them.
Yeah. Well, legally you're allowed to ride two abreast. But
Yeah, they're that far, they've taken up the whole road.
that's
The road will
pretty
state,
busy route.
the road will state that whoever's on the road has to keep to the left.
Yeah.
I
I think that's just a promotional photo too, Bruce. It's just so, like, if those people would be
Well, I did
sensible,
ask you, but thank you for answering my call.
if a car was coming, I think they would pull left.
We're not changing the road rules. We're not changing the requirements that drivers and cyclists have. We're just trying to create an environment that's safer for both to share the road. And we do that through traffic calming treatments. We include the advisory bicycle markings just to highlight the presence of cyclists on the road. So drivers are aware that they're there, and also to position cyclists further away from car doors. Our fifth leading cause of crashes for cyclists is cyclists getting doored. So riding too close to a parked car and having a car door open in their path. So we're trying to position bicycle logos further out from the parked cars now so that people are riding towards the left-hand side of the road where a car can still get around them, but they're outside the door zone or they're in danger.
What are you guys doing about making bike riders where actually they can be seen by people on the road? Because sometimes when it's dark, like the other night, there was a guy completely in black. He nearly got hit by another car, quite clearly, because he couldn't be seen. Everything had lights on. Whereas when I was in the city, I came across two people who were just leisurely riding their bikes, fully had coloured gear on, visibly could absolutely see them clearly. When I pulled up in the lights, I asked them why they were wearing all this gear, and they said that they were nearly hit by cars, and since they've been wearing the bright coloured gear, there haven't been no incidents. But what are you guys doing about forcing people to...
Can I just say, can we hear the presentation first, and then we'll have the questions at the end, because we're not getting anywhere with the presentation with these interjections. So can you just carry on with what you're saying?
Sure, yeah, I have an answer to that afterwards. So in terms of the scope of work, we're looking at Braun Road between Fitzroy Terrace and Regency Road. This past year, we improved the crossing of Fitzroy Terrace with a wider median refuge crossing, and Adelaide City Council linked into that crossing with a new path to the parkway. So with this project, we're looking at improving Braun Road north of Fitzroy Terrace and including a crossing of Regency Road.
Sorry. It doesn't go to Regency Road?
Mark, I thought we weren't going to ask questions.
On particular, if you're asking questions of clarification on what you're saying, that's fine, but you're raising a different issue.
Braun Road Braun Road ends south of Regency Road. The Bike Direct signed network continues on sort of circuitous route local streets through Regency Road.
You just call it Braun Road for...
We're calling the project Prospect Bike Lane and start identifying more where it is and what is local, or where it goes. So in terms of the scope of work, DIPTI would be providing funding up to $250,000. We'd be providing project management, and we'd be improving the crossing of Regency Road. We'd be working with Anders to conduct a traffic study of current traffic conditions on Braun Road and draw up some concept design options. And we jointly, between Council and DIPTI, perform community consultation to go to construction. What that means in terms of timeline, we'd be working on the traffic study and the concept options over the winter and returning to Council in September 2014 to report on those outcomes, likely go for endorsement for community consultation. We spend the next few months working through those options and coming up with a final design option for Braun Road, and returning to Council in January 2015 for endorsement on final design, and then spend the first half of next calendar year in construction. So that's all I have for the presentation.
Okay. Time for questions. You okay with that? Any questions from Neil? Mark.
Look, I've got a couple. Conceptually, a great idea, very supportive. One of the slides earlier talked about, you might have mentioned, talking about looking at routes which have low traffic volumes on them. I'm not sure Braun Road would meet that criteria. So have you done any thinking around that? Because one of the other slides talked about reducing rat running, which I think is a problem for Braun Road. And can you talk a bit about how the bikeway would help with the rat running issue? I can't quite see the connection between the two.
Basically, Braun Road, is a block away from arterial roads on either side. What we'd like to do is have through traffic using the arterial roads. We don't know exactly what's going on in terms of traffic conditions on Braun Road at the moment, so we'd be conducting the traffic study first to see where the volumes are low enough for a shared environment to work well now, and maybe where they're a little higher and we need more interventions to encourage people to use the arterial roads for longer trips. But I don't think, unfortunately, until we have that information, I don't, and we're bringing options to the community, I don't know exactly what the answer to that is.
I think traffic study will be really important, particularly around the school, because there are peak times around school drop-off and pick-up. Another point I was going to make. The timing in terms of coming back to Council for endorsement before going out for public consultation might need to be massaged a bit, given we've got council elections this year, which are going to run at that September timeframe to a degree. So
we'll manage that process.
What we can approve, what we can't. But just in terms of the rat running, can you just explain a little bit about that connection between the boulevard and reducing rat running in the streets? Is it just about the presence of bike riders does that, or?
Well, it's just it's going to function better as a bicycle boulevard the lower the traffic volumes are. So there's a point where if there's too much rat running, it's just not going to function well as a bicycle boulevard. So volumes higher? What's generating those trips? How can we encourage those people to use the arterial roads and make it safer to use the bike boulevard?
I think we'll look forward to your answer.
Christina, Alan, and then Bruce.
Yes, yes, Vaughan Road's down my neck of the woods for 41 years. And occasionally ride a bike, not often, but because I think a traffic study will just show that it is quite a through road for pedestrians as well as cars, because you've got Daphne Street Centre, you've got the childcare centre, you've got 2 schools, and it's quite frequently used by bicycles as well. So it's interesting to see, how we come up with some sort of traffic treatment to help with that. Yeah, the first time I came across those bike signs on the road was down Belfast Street, along the at Woodville, along the railway line there, and because it's such a serious traffic treatment and that, and I wondered what the hell I'd come across. Yeah, because I wasn't quite sure whether I was supposed to be doing something with a straight bicycle, marking on there, having them come towards me. So I think we'll need a lot of community information and education about it as well. But I'm fairly supportive.
Thanks, Christina.
There's another street in Charles Church Council where we put these same markings down. We did have a flyer that we letterbox dropped to all the residents along the way, just so they understood what the markings were for.
And just like, I think it fits in with one of our coming back to one of our favourite projects with the school down there, closed off the whole of Vaughan Road with the kids there, and they trying to encourage them, to get out.
Way to go.
Not to have that terrible problem that we have with school drop-offs and pick-ups there.
Okay, thanks for that, Christina. Alan?
I haven't got any problem with the idea, but more or less strengthen a bit what Mark said over there, that I felt that road's sort of a busier one, and with people cutting through up front doesn't fit what your discussion was. And I always thought those things you were talking about on the road were monuments where people will run over. But as you come to the end of it, that end of it, not this end because you answered Monica about that, but it just comes straight out onto a main road, not an intersection or so where the bicycle just sort of come there and it's an end. I just find it not Galway. You fit into a road and then you can go across to the Torrens or whatever. But Vaughan Road has that little bit at the end and then you straight into a major road, not just a little one. So I have that bit of a problem there, and definitely like Mark said, I find it a bit hard there, the way it fits in. Most of you are busier side roads than most other side roads.
Thanks, Alan.
That's all.
Bruce?
Likewise, I'm concerned about the amount of traffic as sometimes 8 o'clock onwards from Williams, from a lot of people, parents come from the other side of Regency Road to bring their kids to the 2 schools, and they cut through. They don't, instead of going down Prospect Road, they'll cut through Williams and where's the other street? And Miller and Williams Street. It's like being on Churchill Road and Prospect Road. The amount of traffic that actually uses that from about 8 o'clock onwards, and same again in the afternoons. Where would you go from Brian? Where are you going to take the bikeway out onto Regency Road? What road would you going to use? Braun. Edinburgh is one of the. That's right. I'm talking. That's where all the cars come from. Yeah. Williams and Miller, and they go down Edinburgh. And they go on to Braun.
Connaught's closed.
Connaught's closed, and it's mayhem. And it's just like ants, stream and stream after stream, all coming from the other Blair Athlone areas.
But I guess that's what the traffic study would be saying.
You could go down along the side Connaught along the reserve.
Thanks, Christina. Just wait for Bruce to finish. So the answer to that is there will be a traffic study conducted, and that will explore all those issues you've just been raising. Monica? And David?
I mean, I've lived in Gladstone for 20 years, and I don't see Braun Road as an incredibly busy road. It is at certain periods of the time, and people give way quite nicely. It's a nice little road to go down. And I think the issues that you're talking about around the school are a very small period of time in the day, twice during the day. But if you look at it like preventative, is that the word?
Oh, yeah, it's a good word.
Shut up.
Preventative.
Preventative. God, sorry, it's that stroke I had this week. Preventative health in that you put these systems in place and then people start saying, well, hang on a second, we've got the Spike Boulevard. Maybe, and for years we've been trying to encourage people to park in the side, like down Olive and all the other rest if they're going to drop their kids off at school. And maybe something like this encourages people more to walk their kids and ride their kids. So if you look at it in that term, it's actually quite a good place to do it. I just wanted to ask you about the up to $250,000. What does that get us on Braun Road, apart from just bike marking?
Primarily traffic calming. But I also understand that council's worked with Hassel Architects before to look at some of the possibilities for the street. But the first thing we want to do is bring the travel speeds down. Make sure people are adhering to the 40 km/h speed limit, and ideally get them actually traveling slower than that, so they are able to give way to pedestrians or easily negotiate space.
Sure. It's a pretty, the road surface is pretty ordinary, less than ordinary. So I think people might tend to avoid using that road because of the inconsistencies and the ability for kids to fall off bikes. Is there any chance on top of the $250,000 that, resurfacing of the road?
Oh,
Trying to get something through. Try. Sorry?
It's up to.
Okay, and David?
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with any of the comments made. It is a busy road at peak time. It starts out really wide, and historically there's reasons why it starts wide and what ends up narrow. We can't change that now. Where it gets narrow is where the school is, and two schools feed off that road, and it's very challenging. There are also people who park on the road, and we haven't restricted their parking, so maybe we need to look at that, but that has all sorts of implications on its own. Monica's quite right, the surface isn't that good in some places. The curves and gutters are pretty ratty in others. The height differential between footpath and road surface is pretty high in some places. The verge area for trees is minimal in some places. The lighting is... So it's one of our more challenging routes, and I would hope we could have a more joined-up approach than painted arrows on the road. I know that's not all you're offering, but this road needs a lot of help, not a little bit of help. And it does become a bypass route for traffic that maybe wants to get off Churchill Road, but certainly people who take their kids to school don't bother getting back on Prospect Road to go into town. They just can't turn right because it's like a continuous stream at peak hour. And other people coming to Blackfriars come along Braun and loop back onto Prospect Road because that's more convenient than trying to do a U-turn on Prospect Road. So it picks up a heap of school peak traffic. So that's challenging because that's a volume that can, I'll be interested in your views on what volume is the maximum before this doesn't work. But the road needs a lot of help. So I think there's a fair scoping exercise to do before I can get excited about it. I'm glad you're here. It's potential, but boy, let's get stuck into it.
And I think, just comment on that, I think with all these projects, these are a start of a process and an ongoing, it'll be slow evolution across the whole metro area with these projects. So including the greenways aren't complete yet. So a lot more work on the greenways. This is another level in the strategy to work at the more local level, along with arterial road improvements.
Yeah. Just when you talk about traffic calming, on this map here, there's only one device referred to, which is the roundabout, and it'll be improved. That's fine. The traffic calming, what would that look like, or what typically does that look like?
Typically, we leave that up to council side. We've worked with different councils on the Greenways project, and different councils have different preferences in terms of treatment. And so that's, the exact type of devices or, what kind of interventions on the road, we leave that up to public consultation. bringing I mean, that's part of the reason why I've only showed the very basic slides of, of cyclists and motorists sharing the road, is I don't want to give the impression that we have a preferred type of traffic calming treatment. That's something we go through the process.
But to choose an extreme, if our community and we said we really want flat top humps the whole length of Braun Road, you'd envisage that. Well, okay, well, that would be contemplated as part of the bikeway. Okay. I don't think it would, but
or the narrowing or other interventions.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
With the traffic, what we learned through a traffic study is that different environments on the road have different activities going on. There's probably different appropriate treatments for those. So, not
Okay.
necessarily treatment.
I have a question from Bruce and then Ashley, I think.
Those roads are already 40 k's an hour. I heard you say that you had to make cars go even slower.
Typically, most traffic calming devices are designed to get speeds between 25 and 35 kilometers an hour, depending on the space. So yes, that's ideal because cyclists are traveling at about 20 kilometers an hour, trying to get the speed differential as little as possible between the cyclists and motorists.
Ashley.
I think it's a great idea. I don't think any of it's insurmountable. To me, the keys are two things: really good, different signage, so people realise they're entering into a different area, and education. Really let people know these things are coming into being. But I think signage will be crucial, so people see a different kind of sign, so it alerts them that they're moving into a different sort of environment. I think the rest of it will sort itself out. If there are too many bikes there, people will get peed off rat running. To a degree, I think that problem will sort itself.
Okay. Any further? So,
Just one final thing from me. Prospect Road, we've spent a whole heap of time and pain on getting a bike lane on it. It's a peak hour bike lane except this bit, which is our first 24/7 bike lane. But when you get to the parklands, it's pretty scary. And then on O'Connell Street, it doesn't get any better. I had a look at the City Council map of safe bike routes. Virtually every other north-south route going through North Adelaide is noted in blue as a bike safe route, except Prospect Road through the Parklands, O'Connell Street, King William Road, King William Street, which is exactly where I ride to go to work. I'm not very happy about it. So what do we do about this expectation of giving our people Prospect Road's nice and safe, but you have to, I don't know what you do when you get to Fitzroy Terrace. I mean, I ride through it. But yeah, well, kind of. Are you expecting that people would turn right on Fitzroy and go out of their way to get on this bike path, which then goes to O'Connell Street? Or is there room to discuss how we get that improved? Or are you familiar with it? But first off, and what can we do to get that going as well?
We've been having these same cycling network discussions with Adelaide City Council, and Council's preference to improve Margaret Street as an alternative to
Where's Margaret Street?
Margaret Street.
Maybe with the direct pub.
It's a tiny little street in between O'Connell and Lefevre Terrace. Tiny. That's one way some parts and narrowed in others, dead ends in other parts. I mean, it's okay if you're going to ride with your kids at 15 kilometres an hour, but for a commute to work, I mean, no way.
You'd get through there.
Legally, you can't go in one direction now, but I mean, good luck if you can change that with Margaret Street people.
By North Adelaide.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway,
Adelaide City Council is investing in the better path connections to Margaret Street. They've done some of them already.
wow.
Keep the plebs out of North Adelaide.
Giving up.
That's to keep the plebs out of North Adelaide.
In the suburbs.
No,
Or to keep them in.
Margaret Street people.
we probably need to conclude the discussion. But any other main questions from anyone? And as I guess the process from here will be that we'll be reporting to Council in regard to the project, and as the project progresses, where Council can have input into the process. Everyone comfortable and understand that? Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Could you join with me in thanking Mark and Colin for coming on?
Welcome to Prospect.
So,
Right. Thank you. Thanks very much. What we'll do now, we'll move on to the substance of the workshop. I just want to refer back to the notes from the previous meeting. Is everyone comfortable with those notes? Any comments to make? All good? Okay, in that case, the next item today relates to the Code of Practice meeting procedures for Council and Standing Committees. And I think, Ginny, you're going to help us with this. Kerry would normally have presented this, but she's, as I said, is away unwell today. So
the Code of Practice meeting procedures has been emailed to elected members sometime earlier, and Kerry has also worked with our SB5 champion, Councillor Dixon, about some of the content. And we have also received some comments from Councillor Barnett. So the key changes to the meeting procedures are documented on the workshop notes. I think the few key issues. If I just quickly reiterate what they are. So the first of all is sorry, just get to the right page. Okay, it's about Regulation 3.2. The clear days, what does that mean by clear days? That is clearly specified in here. It means one clear day finishes at 5 o'clock, and it includes the weekend. The second issue is to do with the leave of meeting is to be ascertained. So that is Regulation 3.4. So it talks about how it prevents, so for the purpose of this regulation, a vote on whether leave of the meeting is granted may be conducted by show of hands. This prevents the division from being called in relation to the vote. That's the second point. And the third point is to do with when we have a petition, the name and address of a person who signs the petition needs to be presented. And finally, the CEO, the Act enables the CEO to report, to recommend the revocation, or amendment of a council's decision. So previously this was not allowed, but this is the new part of the Act. That's Regulation 21. So if I just read it out to you. So basically CEO now has the power. CEO may submit a report to the council recommending the revocation of or amendment of a resolution that passed since the last general election of the council. So that whole section 21 is the whole new section of the Act. So throughout this document, there are areas where council has discretion, and we have actually highlighted them in red, where council has actually exercised that discretion. For instance, when we talked about a division in section 17 part 5, 17 part 3, when we talk about division, members that voting negative will stand. So that was a specific council resolution. So that is one of the, I guess, the subsections that council has the ability to amend. It's recommended that that stays. And one other part, which council has decided to, I guess, to retain, to actually, the difference is, whoops, that's another part of it in red. Oops, it'll come to me in a minute. It'll come to me in a minute. So those are some of the key changes to this particular procedures. So Councillor Dixon, I'm not quite sure if you have anything else to add. Any changes have been included in this particular version?
The revocation one does surprise me a bit, because I know as a council I don't know whether you remember, about 2 years ago we looked through this, and we were...
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
It was a previous council.
Oh, was it?
Because David wanted to...
No, it couldn't have been. No, Alan was not in discussion, so it must be his
David
council.
wanted to get rid of the pledge.
No, because I remember saying that I didn't feel that staff could put a motion up, and I remember Alan said, yeah, I agree with you. So it had to be this. No, it was this council. I think it was early in this council. Look, I don't have a real problem with it. It's the only concern would be in a dysfunctional council where a CEO might just constantly bung up revocation. I don't like what you've done.
Revoke.
You're talking about completely different thing like you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm confused.
No, actually, it's about revocation.
Yeah, this stuff put in front of us has got nothing to do with the current item being discussed. It's a distraction, I think. This is about the council prayer and other stuff. You're talking about this note in the workshop.
I'm talking about what we've just been discussing.
Exactly, which is the CEO's ability to put up a revocation or rescission motion.
That's
Yeah,
right.
which is number 21.
That's correct.
Which I'm okay with, because at the moment we have. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Where we're at?
Yeah.
So what we're suggesting is that the CEO can put up a rescission motion, whereas at the moment the CEO's going to ring one of us to get us to agree to put our name to the revocation or rescission motion, which if it's an obvious thing seems like a waste of time.
Mm.
No, we can vote it down. I mean,
That's right.
CEO can put up
Just
a
at the line, that sort of thing should come to a workshop.
Yeah.
You shouldn't just dump a revocation motion,
I agree.
And ordinarily it would.
and ordinarily it would. However, this doesn't require that to happen. And, you know, if the motion is passed, it's passed by the elected members. Thus, revoking should come through the elected members, in my opinion.
And to me, looks like there's a couple of people have had discussions about this, trying to force us down our throats.
No, this has come from state government. Their leaders.
No, this is just been...
Is it state government or is this, no, that would be local government association.
Local Government Act.
Local government.
Local Government Regulations. Meeting.
Okay, so it's state government.
Where have the suggestions come from? Has it come from a conspiracy of two in a dark room conniving with blades, Ginny, like Bruce is suggesting, or is it merely...
No, it's local government regulations.
This is part of the regulations. This comes from the meeting procedure regulation. But in this particular item, members have actually have discretionary of the procedure.
But who generated these words? It came from the LGA?
It came from the LGA. That's part of the...
So, you know,
So it's not part of the government, it's just the LGA recommendation.
No. They are the meeting procedures regulations. They are the regulations.
State government.
That's 2013.
State government.
So why didn't the state government ask?
Well, that's what they're
Because
doing
they're-
now. It's the discussion that you have.
You might find lots of other councils didn't have a problem with it. We weren't overly enamoured, but if the majority of councils didn't give a hoot, well, you just got to go with the flow. It's not that big a deal.
Look, I think actually points to Ballard that, you know, ideally it should come to a workshop. I think it's good practice is that it would. But at the end of the day, there's 8 people plus the mayor sitting around the table that can decide to either send it back to workshops or to vote for it or to vote against it.
No disagree, yeah.
And from a timing point of view, it may be quite prudent to put it straight in.
If it's an emergency.
So I have no issue with that.
If it's an emergency, you may be
Yeah,
grateful
and you
for
don't
it.
want to be tied to having to put it through a workshop just for the sake of it.
But we can choose to, should we?
Correct. Just to clarify, this is a regulation. However, it does have a clause to say that council do have a discretionary in this particular procedure. So there is discretion in that. So there is a specific clause in this. So we just need to highlight.
I agree with Mark, and I'm not arguing against you, Ashley, except to say that it's prudent to put it to a workshop where that would make sense. But sometimes these things have got to be done pretty quickly, and the council meeting can handle it. I agree with Mark. If we want to push it to a workshop, we decide at council level to do so. I don't think we embed it in the regulations that every time the CEO wants to put up a rescission or revocation motion that it must have gone through a workshop first.
I guess a classic...
Does that make sense?
Oh, look, not a die in a ditch issue at all, but, you know, when you say these things, it's probably, what, 3 revocation motions in the last 40 years on council?
Yeah.
So I don't agree that it's... You tell me what could be so urgent in a revocation motion that we'd have to slam it up with minimum 5 days notice. Can't imagine. However, it's not a die in the dish. I just think it should be different, but I don't really care.
It could be errors in a draft budget, for instance.
Yeah.
Something like that. That we have to have a special meeting straight away because it's about to go to print and there's been an error noticed and can't wait till the next full meeting, can't wait for a workshop series to go through. It's a very simple thing, but the staff are uncomfortable that what we've said to go out is not the same as what they want.
Of exactly that. I'm aware of another council that has a typographical error in their rates declaration, and as a result they were declared the wrong rate per dollar. So they had to have a revocation and re-adopt the rates to the dollar.
So a classic example is...
Never happened here, actually.
All right.
It happened last council, so the revocation, that actually was a report from the CEO. That actually happened the last at the last council about the streaming of the council workshop. So that was actually utilizing this particular section of the Act.
Look what we did to that.
And you squash it. So,
We.
so it proves that that is not a threat. so Councillor Barnett actually has got a, do you want to lead us to the discussion?
You've all got my little discussion paper there. I've got page 9 in Code of Practice, Meeting Procedures, Council Prayers.
Fully agree.
There are plenty of spares here because we've got lots of one page.
Yeah, I got that.
So has everybody got one?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, this just reminded me back when I was mayor and I was sort of, you know, time to time toy around with some of these things and thinking, you know, and I did ask the former Reverend of St Cuthbert's Church, Peter Randall, who was also a councillor at the time, I believe. Yes. And I discussed with him and said, like, do you think that there could be some, you know, improvement, or what are your sort of feelings about it as a man of the cloth and also elected member and a resident? So he sort of said, just informally, he thought, yeah, it could be, you know, it could be improved and all that. But then, well, one thing and another, and never got anywhere. So I thought, oh, maybe this is a chance for us just purely, you know, to have a discussion about it. I'm not fixed one way or the other. I'm just thinking, you know, we're a fairly progressive sort of council, and so perhaps we should just have a little discussion about it. So I'll just go through my points there, because some of you, you know, just landed before you, and I only finished doing this at about 4:30. So anyway, so it comes under our page 9 in Code of Practice, the council's prayers section, when it talks about the sort of agenda that we've had, like you can see, the materials being handed out. So currently we have the prayer, and we humbly bow before thy throne of mercy, O God, our Heavenly Father, and seek wisdom and understanding. Duties of our United Hearts, praying for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of our land, in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Now, saying the prayers as part of a formal meeting of the South Australian Council is an optional custom. Page 15 of the Local Government Association South Australian Meeting Procedures Handbook 2013 says that, in essence also, that the form and content of the opening of meetings is at the discretion of the Council. And so for some councils open the meeting with a simple welcome from the principal member, others with a prayer, and others use a statement of their own determination. And none of these procedures is a legislative requirement. So what we've had is, I think, I've been a council for 21 years, and I think it was before that, so maybe it came in about 1936. So it's been part of a tradition or a custom. And it could be said that council meetings should be conducted in a manner equally welcoming to all councillors. There should be a common staff and the gallery, because we're all there, all right. So it's not just an elected member sort of type of thing. And this is regardless of individual religious beliefs or lack of belief. So in our citizenship ceremonies, for example, people can either use an oath with or without reference to God. And it could be said that for local democracy to be representative, it's important for local councils to move away from practices that deter full involvement from all sections of the community they serve. In May 2013, of 19 metro councils, and some residents, I think, because this came up at Charles Sturt Council, and there was just an informal survey by a resident about the acknowledgement / prayer / pledge, because that's what them can have all one or the other. And the part for prayer in the survey was that 11 do not have a prayer out of a 19 metro council. I don't know whether that's changed or not, one way or the other. In Prospect Council area, we've got a variety of cultures and religions and places of worship. And so I'm just suggesting that our current prayer could be changed to a more modern invocation, if use of thesaurus, that's the day meeting with prayer, or a pledge. Some have a pledge. And that equally applies to elected members present at the council meeting, because we're all standing around there, we're all part of it. And I just did a little bit of research and seen what some others come up with. So I thought perhaps the suggestion is we're gathered here with a shared belief that we must treat our fellow human beings with respect and dignity, that we will conduct our duties with honour and integrity, that we will endeavour to promote good government as we face the duties of our united task, working together on behalf of all citizens in our city. So I throw it over to you as a discussion starter.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, Bruce.
Oh, look, I mean, I've seen all this stuff before where the attack on childcare centres where they can't have Father Christmas and they can't have Christian themes for Christmas. I think this is anti-Christian. We're a Western nation based on Christian values, and I think this is very anti-Christian, what we have before us. The council prayer actually says a lot in it. If you actually read it, it does actually say a lot in it. And I mean, I have a lot of friends with a different variety of cultures and religions, and they say, well, why have they taken away the Christmas thing, and why have they taken this from the child? We quite openly want to join in. This is anti-Christian at its highest, and I'll fight it. I'll put this council chamber up with Christians.
I'm a Christian.
And
thank you. So don't insult me.
So I think our council prayer says it all. It says a lot, and I prefer to leave it as it is.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other comments?
Where do we want to start? Okay.
And Mark.
Look, I don't think what Christina's brought up is your anti-Christian thing. I don't have any problem pointing out that I have no gods. I have Mother Earth that created all things in the end of the story. I think we're human beings. I actually like Christina. It's stunned me. I like that bit you've written down there. I know you write other good things, but that's really impressive too. I stand there and I generally look at the mayor when we have open things, and I've had 3 mayors. I haven't. There's been 3 mayors while I've been on council before. And I sort of look at David and we go through the bit about the Indigenous people, and it throws quite a bit of pride in me. I think it always should change. I don't like reading it. But it's certain things. I come to meetings, and it's me as an individual. I don't humbly bow to anyone. I don't sit on or get under anyone's throne of mercy. I don't do anything apart from my Catholic upbringing. I won't say JC's name in vain. It's a superstition I've still got. But I feel, when I look and listen to David, that I'm going to do the right thing. I find that if there's people that come from a different religion, and I do agree with you, Bruce, I don't think we should stop Christmas and other things like that, because that is part of our culture. But our culture is broader and getting broader again. You know, every day it's extending. And we'll be lucky in my time on council, which isn't as long as Christine, I think we only had one person that was actually the opposite of Christian. I'm not sure whether he's a Muslim or what, but it's a total different type of religion. And the opportunity of people that do run for council, that not so much offensive, but to me, if I had to say it, and every time I've been the acting mayor, I've always made sure someone else has said it. I've asked other people to do it. Because, apart from the old Christian words that I got frightened of, it's because I don't think I'm honest if I read out a thing like this. And I don't want to be dishonest to the people that I think are doing the right meeting. So I know Christina's done it for me, I think Mark's done it for me, Frank Scott's done it for me, you know. So, particularly because Christina's put an alternate there that maybe we can work on. But I find that alternate down the bottom is pretty, without, we're saying it, if you filled a room full of Christians and that, I'd tip you out and say good luck to you, and I've got no disrespect to you, and good luck. It's not going to change the way I think or the way I do think, and I think I try and look after other people. So I would like to see it change as an individual, And I'm more than happy at looking at Christina's sort of proposals down the bottom. Without, I think, if we voted, and we don't, if we vote on the night we vote, I don't think I'll be disrespectful to any Christian or any other person.
Okay, thanks for that. Mark and then Monica.
Look, I think it's a really good debate to have. I guess what I go back to is what is the problem we're trying to solve by changing it? And that to me is the issue. I.e., do we have a problem? If we do have a problem, what's a good solution to it? I would challenge anyone to, people have views on this, I welcome them, but Christine, you talked about equally welcoming all councils and staff to Gallery, deter full involvement from all sections of the community they serve. And I'm just curious to know how that particular tradition that we do in council does deter people from full involvement in all sections of the community they serve, or if not equally welcoming council, staff and Gallery. So I'm just not quite sure. I think it's a good debate to have. I'm not particularly sort of excited about those words, and I think the problem is, in this council, we will go on forever trying to workshop the words. You know, I guess it has the word terrific prospect, I should be happy, but beyond that, where I can sense that we're going to spend a lot of time trying to workshop those words. I just don't, I'm not sort of for it, I'm not against it, I'm not quite sure what the problems we're trying to solve and so on about that. I'm not sure why we're trying to do something other than what we've been doing in the past. But respecting the view to put it up and so that others comments as well.
Excellent, Mark. And Monica?
I think sometimes you guys watch too much Today Tonight, because childcare centres and schools aren't getting rid of Christmas and Christianity. What they're doing is introducing more of other cultures for that inclusiveness. And I think, Mark, there is a problem with the wording in this, is that it's not inclusive to all. Anybody who could end up on council or wants to be part of council. I'm at Alan. I don't listen to this prayer. I go think of something else, because it's nothing that I believe in. Well, I don't think it is, Bruce. I think you are being disrespectful by not acknowledging other people.
Just listen to Monica, thanks.
I'm not fussed about the words. I think it's quite nice. I think it's quite inclusive. And, you know, I think for us to be considered we're a hugely multicultural community. We have lots and lots and lots of people from other cultures living in our city, and I think we need to reflect the people that live in our city. So I think that might be the problem, Mark. It doesn't reflect Prospect.
But you're talking about a cultural statement, not a religious one. And I think there are two different things.
No, because a lot of people, religion is their culture. So I don't think that's a true statement at all.
No, but you said we're a multicultural society. I totally agree. I think we are. But that doesn't
well, I'll just say it again, Mark. For a lot of people, their religion is their culture, and I don't think that we should only reflect one religious belief. I think we should reflect all.
Fair comment. Anyone else? David?
I think this is a sensitive issue, and I'd really like Bruce to stop being disrespectful about it, and both in playing with his phone and his iPad, and also making threats about bringing a gallery full of people to support his position. I don't think that's what we're here to do. And I think if there's I won't say that, but anyway, the prayer is meant to set the tone of the meeting, and I hope that's the tone that we carry out our business with. We don't have one at the start of the workshop, so we happily survive without it, and many councils survive without a prayer. Other councils that I visit do other things, and there's a list of things you can do, but generally they have something that sets the mood or seeks to set the mood at the start of the meeting. We've had what I think is quite an old-fashioned Christian prayer at the start of our meeting for some time, and just to correct the record, I didn't seek to get rid of the prayer in my first term here. What I sought to do was to do exactly what Christina has brought tonight, which is a more inclusive and less exclusive version of a statement that set the tone for our role at the meeting. And I engaged, actually, Peter Randall to write one. So I got a bit further, and I read it out at a meeting, and I left the meeting black and blue and bruised and full of holes. So I was denigrated for destroying one of the traditions of council. And I thought that was unfortunate. I probably didn't handle his introduction well. And I said, here's a suggested alternate prayer. And some members of that council took it as an affront and the tearing down of the very fabric of the council, which I thought was a moderate overreaction. Anyway, suffice to say, this is not at the core of what we do, but it is a statement we make. We choose to make it, and I think we choose to make a statement which is exclusive and old-fashioned, where we could choose to make one which is more inclusive and more contemporary. So it's not a problem that we need to solve. It's not right for it. But I think it is a deficiency in how we interact with our people. We've got councillors, I think Alan's expressed it really well. It doesn't mean anything to Alan, and in fact it could be a little bit hostile to Alan's position. Well, why would we want a statement that goes back to people? It doesn't make sense to me. I would have thought we'd have one that we all think is worthy. When we hear it, we go, yep, right, I'm tuned in. That's my job. So I support Christina. The exact words, let's not stress about that right now. I support the intent. And I'd really like us to have a respectful discussion about it. That isn't one that's seeking headlines, isn't one that's kind of making threats. It's a sensible discussion engaged with us and with our community. So thank you for bringing it up.
You have Bruce and then Ashley.
Well, I consider your words affront to me. My opinion is worth what I'm saying. That's why I'm elected to represent people, and I'm having my say, and you're disregarding my to have my say. I find that affronting.
I'm not disregarding you.
You are. I find it very affronting.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah, no, I find it very affronting to try and my opinion is not worthy of anything.
Anyway, people can hear what they can hear, and thank you for saying that.
Any further comment? Ashley.
I believe utterly and totally in the separation of the church from government. I don't think there is a place for a prayer in what we do. Randall, I was totally against him being elected to this council. To me, that was the church coming back into government, shouldn't be part of it. I don't even like people that work for the government being on council. I really think it's a conflict. So mine is I go a lot further. Perhaps a few of you cover that.
You're going to quit your job, you're going to resign tomorrow.
But I can live with that. But the church being involved in every meeting, it offended me that he was there. Nice guy, but we in England started it hundreds of years ago, totally separating the two. I brought up once before when they discussed it, I think under you, Christina, that at the very least we should leave out the words Jesus Christ, because most of the rest can cover almost every religion. The Muslims, they believe in Jesus Christ. He's the second most important prophet in their religion. The Jews don't see it the same way. They have a real problem. But it's quite conceivable 5, 7, 10 years from now, next election, we could have half a dozen Jews and half a dozen Muslims on council. What are they going to do with reading that? I mean, they can't read it, really. It's, the Jews killed him. They're not about to start bending over. I would much rather see something that's simply a welcome to the meeting, something respectful. I just do not see the church should be involved in government in any way at all.
Okay. Any further comments? Otherwise I'll get Christina to summarise it.
Sorry, can I pick up on something that David said? I think it's probably the key and may help us to find a common way forward, which is talking about something that is inclusive as opposed to talking about the problem being there. I think there's subtle in language there, but I think it's actually really important because I'd be much more excited about engaging in debate about having something that's inclusive rather than there being fingers pointing across the room saying, well, you want to burn the hell and you're not, and I believe this and I don't believe in that, because I don't think that's going to help us. And that's my point about I don't think we'll reach an end point if that's how we go about it. I'm happy to have the debate about how can we be more inclusive in what we do, because it would be, I'm not saying I would argue this, but I'm saying it would be possible for someone to argue by removing the prayer that's not including that particular person in terms of what they believe in. And that might be what Bruce was trying to say earlier. I don't know. But, so I think we need to kind of use that as the headline. How can we say something that is inclusive as opposed to saying, here's a problem we're trying to solve. And I just want to comment on my point, just so I'm very, very clear and on the record. I think there is a difference between culture and religion, and I don't think we can get the two mixed up, because people can be from many different cultures and have the same religion. People can be from many different religions and have a different culture or the same culture. So I don't think we can't sort of use that as the debate. I think they're two very different things. I don't agree with you, that's you're saying, but I agree with the way that you kind of put those two together.
No, it's not actually, anyway, I'm not going to argue.
I think it's a point well made. And I have to say, I don't dislike the prayer. It's meaningful to me.
Yeah, that's right.
But every time I read it, I think, I reckon there's people in the room that this means nothing to them. And I reckon when I read it, there's people who just kind of go, oh, gee whiz, I didn't have to hear that. And I think, crikey, why can't we fix that?
And that's probably a better way to frame it, rather than
And
here's a prayer.
some people close their eyes and bow their heads, and others don't.
Well, that's
So that's
sure. Yeah.
I've never noticed anybody close their eyes.
I do from the chair.
I'm just going to take back control. Just finishing off, I'd like to have Bruce and then Christina, do you want to finish the discussion, please?
I quite think that our prayer is inclusive because it takes not only about God, but it talks about understanding as we face the duties of our, I might read the wrong thing, understanding as we face the duties of our united task. It says praying could be meaning a lot of things as well, for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of the land. Now that is inclusive, and it says many things as well as the prayer. So, I mean, it's something that our forefathers set up, and I think it's a good prayer that was set up, which was very inclusive and means a lot of things about. Alan might like the prayer of Jesus being in there, but he might like the other bits in there. And I think this is very inclusive for Christians and for other things that you can read into this, not just about Christianity.
Okay, we need to hold it there. Christina, would you like to summarise?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also mentioned that it doesn't only involve us as elected members. It involves the staff that are there as well, and it involves anybody who might happen to be in our gallery. And so they are being required to take part in this, whether they do or they don't. Of course, it's up to them. But I do think that many churches have changed. They haven't stuck with even the Catholic Church, if I pick out one. Many of my friends are Catholic. And the Mass changed, the Latin Mass changed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah. And
so
I think I've been in just about nearly every church I can think of over the years, and have friends and relatives and work colleagues and that. And I think that you do have to find common ground. You do have to think, well, what do we stand for? I guess that's what I try to do in some of our words. And some of that is actually all about our code of conduct. And to me, that is, as a collegiate group coming together, as we're not a church, we're not here as a religion, right? We are here as elected representatives of the people, and our staff who are employed in that same way. And I just think, I thought, look, it's really at the time we do modernise things, just like many other institutions have.
Thanks for that. Now I just need to clarify where to from here. As far as the draft code goes, we'll be reporting to Council at the coming Council meeting, so you can discuss the merit of that or otherwise. Of interest to me is this issue that Christina has raised, and there are two ways forward that I can see. One is to incorporate that item within the report to Council. The other way is for Christina to raise it as a motion on notice. There's two kind of ways. Can I get a feel from around the table as to whether you're keen to have it included in the report to Council or leave it to Christina? So, Alan?
Well, my question goes to you to give me my answer. So, did this bit, the top bit, into the report to Council, that'll be in part of the recommendation?
Yes.
Then I'll tell you now that I'll oppose the recommendation. Which you've got to oppose the whole lot. Well, it doesn't mean, if everyone else supports it, that the next time I come, because I never bow my head down, I look the other way. And that's just me. So I'll accept it. But when I've got a choice, I will not vote for that.
When you say that, Alan, you mean the word prayer?
The Christian bit up the top.
Yeah, because in this, that's just the prayer. Just leave the word prayer out. Welcome. That could be a prayer, it could be anything. We might change our minds.
I need to clarify.
I suggest you put up all the other stuff separately, and the idea about changing the prefacing statement, prayer, whatever, as a separate item, and I think a motion on notice might be the way to do it. So that we don't get distracted from getting all the other governance stuff sorted out, because it's pretty straightforward, I think.
I think that is a clear way to go. So
I agree. I think Christine should pick up a motion, personal motion, and it doesn't conflict with anything else.
I just have a problem. What is the motion on notice going to be?
Christina seeks to change the council, but we don't
To what?
whatever is proposed.
Change the wording has just been through, or to...
Don't you think, I mean, you can't just have a motion and then have nothing. And we've got to come to a workshop and maybe everybody bring their...
Okay, sorry.
That would be a better motion that goes to workshop.
Yeah.
And that can be determined by Christina. She can suggest that the item be further discussed in detail at a council workshop.
So I should have clarified that. That's what I would have thought. But these other governance matters that are on the workshop agenda should be straightforward. This other thing might take a while. You know, we might want to go and get a Peter Randall or somebody else to give us a hand, or we might have our own ideas. Could take a couple of weeks before it gets to the council agenda, which I think.
I agree with Alan's problem, leaving that word prayer in. If we're going to change it, make it council welcome. Could be a prayer, could be anything we decide, but it doesn't create a problem for people that don't want to pray.
It doesn't prohibit us from continuing with the prayer either. So we'll make that subtle change. So the intent is then to report to council on the code. Leave it at that. Christina, you're invited if you wish to put a motion on notice forward. I can assist you with the wording for that if you want.
Just on that cover, I was coming to that. We will propose to have an inclusion of what is highlighted about the pre-recording of the council minutes meeting. Just want to seek members' approval for us to include the yellow highlight. So that's exactly
Can we make a change?
Yeah.
An ordinary meeting of council of City of Prospect, get rid of that the.
Yeah.
I just think it's very important to alert you every time that this meeting is being recorded, and anyone in the gallery as well. So I think we'll do that particularly for the council meetings and also the workshops.
Yep. So we will incorporate that change in our attachment. Yep.
Everyone comfortable with that?
Is it worth putting in the word video in front of that?
The video recording.
Just to be really clear that it's not
Really
It
clear.
is a video recording, it's a digital recording. It's not a video, it's longer.
Well, I'm just saying it's picture and voice.
Yeah.
So people aren't confused, there's no cassette tape. It's
We'll clarify that, the right word.
whatever the right terminology is.
We'll find that. Yep.
MP3 or whatever it is. Or
Today, 5 tomorrow.
Okay, so thanks for that. We'll move on to the next item. Everyone comfortable? Yep. Right, next item is, ready, Ginny, fees and charges for the coming year.
Yep. I'll hand that to
Chris?
Yep. Chris will help.
Good evening to all members. Yesterday you would have received a copy of our proposed draft fees and charges for 2014-15. In essence, our fees and charges manual is actually made up of 3 sections. So back in March, Council endorsed the dog fees, which have gone off to the Minister. And the other section is in relation to our state government set fees, or fees that are set in legislation. What I wanted to talk to members about tonight is our actual user charges. So these are the discretionary fees and charges that Council has powers over to actually enforce. For the 14-15 year, we have increased these fees from 13-14, majority based on CPI. For those of you unaware, as at in March, CPI was 2.9%, and so we've used that figure. Unless there's actually a direct cost pressure, I guess, that actually relates to that fee. To use an example for that, the advertising costs, if we have an increase in our advertising costs from our advertising supplier, then we may have used their increased percentage in order to do an increase in our fees. Just one fee I did want to note, in section 2 we have our community event fees. We did this afternoon notice some inconsistencies with the power charge at different events, and so we're looking to move to have a charge of $25. Sorry? So in section 2 of the community event fees, there's a power usage or a site usage for power. So this is basically providing power outlets at St Helens Fair, as well as any of our Prospect Road events. As I mentioned, there were some inconsistencies. I think it mentioned $16 in one section, 25 in another. So we're just looking to make that consistent 25, no matter what event it is. So in essence, that is the floor. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure the directors are aware of future things.
Okay. Christina.
There's after your send in a comment about the street parties. I held my breath when I spent $700 to hold a Christmas party. Again, we're being inclusive, aren't we? People can actually have a Christmas street party and
Only if wish.
if they so wish. No, I don't think that's right.
This is a cultural.
Cultural.
That's religious.
Anyway, my query was that because we just had a Christmas street party, what happens if somebody applies for a street party per se, or another religious festival street party day?
Or a bar mitzvah, or that's the same thing.
So what we're really talking about is a street closure. That's the cost.
Yeah.
Not to do with a Christmas
or what the event is.
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just a private street closure.
Yeah,
But it's just so unbudgetable. I mean, you put that on the table, and could be 300.
Well, why wouldn't we just call it the private road closure fee, or whatever? So you don't mention it's a party. That's right. And when someone goes to say, what do I need to do? Say we need to pay the private road closure fee. Really? I just want to have a party. But if you want to close your road, you've got to pay. Because I think people get confused that we're somehow anti-party. I love them. I think they're fabulous. But we are bound by state acts of parliament. We're bound by the Roads Closing and the Roads Opening Act. And we're bound by the Road Traffic Act.
I thought as soon as we did.
Oh, yeah. You've got to get with the Marty party. So the issue should be really focused on this being a compliance cost. It's nothing to do with our opinion about people love, free love, parties, nothing.
So what are we suggesting? That if somebody wants to close the road, we will pay the fee?
No, I suggest that there's a fee that's $772 because that's what it costs. As I understand it, that's the minimum we can...
And drop the word Christmas street party to road closure.
Private road closure.
yes.
Unless, Alex, you've got a better term for it.
No, that's street closure. That's
No, I think I'll go with private road closure.
So that's,
Private road closure.
Or was it public road? We should say
because
temporary.
that's what the cost goes to, isn't it? The start time, etc.
It's not a private road, it's a public road closure.
There you go. I knew you
Public road closure.
the breakdown of that is, I think it's around $250 for advertisement costs in terms of making sure that we follow Section 33 of the Local Traffic Act. And then the other is recouping costs from staff, depot staff. To be able to
772 covers all our costs.
So our costs are around $500 to put the signs out.
That's correct. Yeah.
And sorry, look, I harped on about this last year. I'm going to harp on it again this year. There's no way that we can look at reducing those costs, i.e., instructing a responsible person who's putting the party on to say this is what has to happen.
Councillors don't do it.
Councillors could do it. It's just I was approached by someone who wanted to hold a street party, and I told them the cost, and they said, well, that's not going to happen. And we negotiated something else in the premises, so that's okay. But it is a large cost. I know we talked last year about maybe trying to negotiate with the messenger to see whether they would come to the party with something. But for a truly street party of a group of residents who want to do something, whether they would accommodate something. But if the bulk of it is ours, then we need to take the bulk of the responsibility for it.
Yeah,
so it doesn't become a legislative issue, it becomes a council issue.
Well, hang on. The only reason we need all the
We mean the
signs
requirements,
is to comply.
But that $500 is going, I'm presuming, into overtime and stuff.
Well, it is. Traditionally, I think, most residents want to have street parties on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So it's obviously from 6 to 10, 11. So that's going to incur some costs.
So just to play devil's advocate for a minute, if they want to hold a street party at 12 o'clock in the middle of the weekday on a road, how would we justify $772 beyond the advertising costs?
We do it really well.
Okay, I'll take that.
It
just becomes a harder argument to run, given that staff would be around. The true cost wouldn't be $500; it'd be a lot less.
Yeah.
Christina?
Our promotion or explanation or somewhere that when people apply for these, my other point was that we said that we're going to make them aware of the community grant possibility, that they could apply for a community grant, but then there's timing that had to be really well planned. And then I think, I forgot what the other point, I should put my information there. Yeah, so that they have some information when they come and inquire, like if it's in with all our other stuff about council deeds and
I think the years gone by too, also when people used to have the old-fashioned street parties, is that there wasn't that amount of traffic around then, whereas now it's just tenfold.
Well, Christina, Alan, then Mark.
Just as a comment you made, Chris, I was going to, that applying for a grant through the community, and I personally think it's out of hand, that they've got to have a constitution, they've got to have a treasurer, someone's got to write a letter and all that. And if you're going to have a party, and I've had one, financials, and it was quite successful. We took our own signs down, so the council put them up. And mine's by the school, you know, and the whole street was involved, and we did pay, but someone earlier made a comment too that it's different, something I read from you, about a private party, you know, in your street and that, by putting the thing in the messenger. I don't know if it's happened to anyone else, because you've got to actually advertise that you're closing the street and all that. They have people from Port Adelaide come that go to all these, and this is years ago, go to all these because they know they can get a feed and a drink. But just hanging around the people's parties. They actually follow them around. No feed. And, well, got rid of them, but they're on camera, I can't talk about that. But, you know, and so you are open once you advertise it, and it's because it is our roads, the government's roads, so you can't. So that's the only thing with applying for grants. Now that becomes sort of such a hard thing. They've got to set up committees, constitutions, banks, just to have a street party.
And Mark?
Hang on, Mark, then Bruce, then Christine.
Oh, I hadn't thought that I'd finished speaking.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had.
Get on with
it.
Yeah, because the other thing is that it does then get a very expensive exercise, $772, and then they've got to pay a few $100s of insurance on top of that. So you're looking close to $1,000. So unless somebody is organised for perhaps school or that, they're not likely.
Having at Mark Groot's place, all of them.
Having a park.
Yeah, so that was the other thing, that in the information is that we do point out that if they did go to a park, that I don't think there's any cost.
That's correct, it wouldn't be required. Okay, thanks for that. Mark?
So I was just going to pick up on the theme about the grant, because we talked about this in Champions Group a few times. The issue I've got with applying for a grant is that where residents apply for the City of Prospect to give the residents money to pay back to the City of Prospect. It seems a little bit of a sector argument, and it points to Alan as well. The other thing that we've spoken to Deb about was whether there's some capacity for us to have some money in the budget where we can provide a rebate to people. I know you won't like this actually, but we talked about that sort of involving community concept where we could actually have an amount of money that we talk to the Lions about, or the council provides, where we could offset the cost somewhat. You know, as I find out that more of the cost is really our own internal costs, I think the capacity to do that's probably greater.
Now,
leave it at that.
I did admit, David, before Bruce. You put your hand up before, didn't you?
Yeah, I put both hands up, just to be sure. This is something that we obviously I'd like to see more of. I think most of us want to see more activity in the city. That's part of our strategic plan. And whilst you can do the stuff in a park, anything that kind of makes roads the domain of people in and out of cars, I think is a good thing. I'm wondering if we could tackle it a different way. I'm going to just push back a little bit here. And advertising under statutory, you know, they have to do it under the legislation. So it can't quite escape that, although I'm sure our friends at the Messenger would love to help sponsor it as part of their neighbourhood, Neighbour Day kind of thing. That'll make a headline. I'm wondering if we could take an approach of people doing the traffic management themselves on the basis that we give them a drawing with a standard layout. So these are the signs that you need. You can get those signs off of us, provided we've got them available. So there might need to be some kind of limitations around the stuff. But you need to put a deposit on it of a reasonable size. So the signage is not cheap, you know. So it's got to be a couple $100 deposit, and there's a delivery and pick-up fee. So I don't have people coming in and out of the depot, which I understand is a problem. If it's not, then they could come and pick it up. But if we drop it off during business hours, we pick it up during business hours. It's 1 hour for maybe one guy. I don't know how many people need to pick up the signage, but it should be one person, I presume. But we provide another mechanism, or we say we can do the whole lot for you for $772, your choice. Right? But I think we could have a bit more of a sophisticated approach, which relies on people doing the right thing And the way to do that is we attach an expiation notice to it. If you've taken out got the form, and our inspector finds you haven't been compliant, well, you've got to pay a couple $100 fine or something like that. So there's a carrot, but there's a stick. Is that feasible, or can you go away and think about whether that could work?
Yeah, look, I think so. I guess it depends on the site. It depends on a whole number of issues, I guess. If we get applications in Vaughan Road, then obviously then you've got to start the question whether you put that responsibility on the residents or on the applicant.
Just say no, wouldn't you?
Sorry?
Just say no, wouldn't you?
Well, you would, but I guess so I guess, yeah, no, I'll take that on board and happy to provide some information back.
I think that's worth coming back to a workshop with some options and some figures perhaps associated with it. And we have Bruce, then Ashley.
What's going to happen now, because the old days when you had a street party with just people in the street came, or you had a party at your house for whatever reason, and just your relatives or your friends came. With social media today, some people came from Port Adelaide to go to these parties, but the social media today, where you're having these people, like hundreds or thousands of people rocking up to these things and creating just mayhem with alcohol and whatever, and then they end up with riots and police. Well, how's our council going to be if that happens? What's going to happen? And there's all this rubbish in the street because of all the waves, all the broken bottles and the bricks and the...
Why isn't it happening now? Such a problem. What's going to change?
Because we're not allowed the street park.
We are. Had it for years, though.
Previously. But
plenty of parties where 10,000 people turn up.
Yeah, which has happened in the state where people have parties, and the whole street. Cars, police, riots,
terrific brush.
urinating, let a bottle or splashing bottles. What's going to happen with our council? How are we going to be with the rest of the press when it gets on with that? Oh, this council allowed this to happen.
Yeah, I just think there's a difference between a street party and a closure than a party that gets out of control. And both, if it gets out of control, it's a police matter. It's a police matter, fundamentally.
Who's going to pay for all the clean up and the program?
I don't understand why you're raising this other than trying to get the second headline in next week's paper. If this is a problem,
I'm just asking,
what's changing though? What's
I'm saying social media has changed now, David. This is why you're getting these riots now, because
we had any riots?
No, but they have it palletized. I think those isolated incidents that you see on the news where people do turn up, they're all house parties. None of them are street parties.
And again, they are police matters. That's very nice. We'll move on, thanks.
It's a public road, it's a public policing matter.
To break your other arm there.
I'll be able to get in.
Okay, Ashley, thanks.
I think it's certainly a conversation we should take up with DipTide, probably through the Local Government Association, probably through the President. I mean, if, for example, a main blows on a street, you close it off straight away. There's no advertising. You don't let it pour water for 6 weeks while you advertise it. I would have thought there is a conversation we could have to look at the ability of the council, not for places like Prospect Road or main arterials, but the ability for councils to close off streets on a temporary basis on their own volition. It would not be that big a deal.
We can.
We do, pardon?
We can. No, but seriously, we can. All we've got to do is let the landowners and the general public know that it's going to be closed.
No, but if something goes wrong, like a burst main or whatever, or when the mob putting in the NBN code, they just turn up, shut the street off, and get on with it.
They have other powers.
Well, of course.
But what you've got to...
Well, and I'm suggesting, perhaps, I don't see really the importance of advertising 2 weeks ahead you're going to shut a street. I mean, who reads it, who knows it, who would, whatever. When you get to it, you see you can't turn left into the street, what do? What would we all do? Go to the next one and turn left? Go to the next street.
As I understand it, in answer to your question, if you've got a street that's got 50 houses on it, and you want to lawfully close the street, you can lawfully stop person in middle of street at number 25 getting to their driveway. Okay? If you don't lawfully close the street, the police will say, get out of the way, it's a public thoroughfare, that person can get to their driveway. So shift all your tables and chairs.
Agree. I'm saying go through the LGA to change that, to make it so councils have that authority, rather than
lawfully, so bring our police force back. Okay, we've got the battens out there. You'd need to expiate somebody who is unlawfully coming into a closed road. Okay, so you need to go through the state provisions to enable the police to say, I'm sorry, you can't get to your house until this party's finished at 10 o'clock at night. And local government doesn't have the power to enforce police matters.
You ever heard of spikes?
Brilliant. Well,
I mean,
sure.
Yes, I mean, but you could apply that sort of rule of people doing the wrong thing across a million things. If somebody's daft and really wants to drive through the signs, okay, so you get out of the way, they park their car.
Yeah.
But I just think it's worth seeing if there's a different avenue through local government associations to see if that can be relaxed, so that council of their own volition can close the street and not have to advertise the fact. No different.
That's the key difference, not advertising.
Yeah, there are some requirements in emergency services as well in terms of notification.
Sure. If anybody dies, you open, move the sign, and in they come, take the dead body away, and you shut it again.
The other option is just having parties around the NBN roll out.
They just close them off.
Have it then.
We can put up a fine NBN.
Sorry, there are obvious solutions to this which don't involve money, and they're closer to what you're talking about actually, and that is that people do have a lawful right to be on a road, stand there and converse, and it's not unlawful to stand on a road. We just think it is. You can actually do all sorts of things on a road. You can play cricket, play footy, you can have a party on a road. The only thing that you currently can't do, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, on a public road is restrict vehicular traffic coming through, and that's what people seem to want to do in a party. There is a very well-known consultant that travels around. He's been here saying, please do not put a sign up saying road closed. Just occupy the street. If someone comes down in a car and they want to get through, really want to get through, well, you'll let them through. But they will stop and go, what's this? What's going on here? And they'll inevitably turn around and go away because they see the street is blocked. So his recommendation is, don't make it look like a formal closure. Just live in your street. Live in your front yard. So you can do what you're suggesting. The difference is lawfully stopping vehicular traffic coming through. And that does require emergency service notification and blah, blah, blah. So the police can actually stop someone and say, you cannot drive through the Christmas cake to get to the bar mitzvah cake or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty much concluded where we need to with those street party issues. So we'll come back to a workshop with some options and some costings. I think that has merit, what you're talking about.
When did somebody last ask for a street party, by the way?
Last year there's two.
I've read one been going for 15 or 16 years.
This is really stressful for them.
They gave up.
Our street has a street party every year, and we just take turns hosting it in front yard. So
perfect.
Clifton and North Street.
There's lots of ways.
we're not putting it on social media because you're not all invited.
Which is, so Mark, you want to get a fees thing up soon. I actually wanted to know what last year's fees were compared to this year, but I'll come back to that in a second. This particular item, I think we've agreed to change the name of it. Could you perhaps add to it all advertising signs set up and dismantling by council? And if we come back with an alternative, it can be an extra line in the fees and charges register. I mean, just from a governance point of view, you want to get this up and approved, but we've asked for something different, but it'll be alongside it, not instead of.
Sure, that makes sense.
Okay. Can I come back to, this looks like a really comprehensive register, but I've got no idea what's going up by $1 or $1,000. Can you, in the absence of that, can you tell us, is there anything here that's going up substantially more than, say, CPI or something like that?
I don't believe so, unless Brendan's got anything in his area. I don't believe any of them are going to.
Yep, there's a couple of things to draw your attention to. Just a moment to... most of the fees and charges are actually, as Chris mentioned, are at CPI March quarter, which is at 2.9. But with some of the community events, Carolyn advised that there was some it was costing us more, so they've gone up more than the 2.9, and they included items such as the electricity surcharge per outlet, which last year was $15, and this next year will be $25, and that's just
basically reflects an increased cost for that. And just flicking my eye down here, that's pretty much the, I mean, I'm happy to go through the sort of the standout ones. And Carolyn's added, where are we? She's added a new fee within Prospect Road events. She's added a new fee that wasn't there this year, and that's retail trader, including food and wine, outside of council boundary, and that's a fee of $850. Whereas the within council boundary is $361, and that's an increase of 2.9% from last year. So
Council boundary, what do you mean?
From outside.
Not local.
Oh, right.
So,
oh yeah, whatever. Put what you like. Put zero on the
the new fee. So
it's oversubscribed. Plenty of people knew that the fee still wanted to be here. Okay. Yeah.
Carolyn suggested that as a way to recoup some costs for those expensive events, and to the preference are given to locals.
Do we have a breakdown of within and outside of council boundary retailers at Treaty Prospects?
Can't answer that, Mark. I would imagine so. But I can, yeah, I'll take that on notice.
Interest more than anything else.
Do you know if Caroline's given any thought to, because sometimes we need people from outside to fill gaps, and if that fee stops them coming, that then could affect the event.
Wouldn't that be discretionary though?
No.
Can we, I mean, is there a way that you can give power that you do make it discretionary?
Well, in government you run into a problem.
Yeah.
You know, in government you've just got to have a fee or not a fee.
Just to clarify your question, Ashley, it was to get some information. You're concerned that it doesn't actually stop people from...
No. I know at times we've invited people, even into St Helens, that are from outside because it fills a gap. Now, if we're inviting people in to fill a gap we don't provide, but the $800 stops them dead, then do we cut off our nose to spite our face? And there is my...
Didn't we say that we had it oversubscribed last time? Yeah, we did.
But there was no $850.
Yeah, it was. No, there absolutely was.
Oh, that was there?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, well, I thought you said that was a new fee. You said
no, the outside council boundaries is a new fee.
It's new in the register, but that's what Carolyn was charging, was $800.
Okay. I wasn't aware.
Oh, they were being charged?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Was
remember the history of this. We said before we can't have anybody from outside the council zone, right? You only have traders from within. And we were a bit light on in some places, and people ring up saying, I desperately want to be part of it, and we were going, well, no, you can't come. So we changed that. We let the staff change the policy to say you can come, but you're going to pay a premium. And it got lapped up. So I think it's a healthy thing to do. The thing you're talking about at the fair in particular, where there wasn't someone doing espresso coffee, one of the schools used to do it and they stopped. No. Yeah, I can't remember which school. But we let one of those come in. The fee doesn't apply to the Prospect Fair. It's only to the Prospect Road event. It's the only place. And I think because it's a business-focused event, that I think that's the only place it should apply. And that gives the staff discretion at other events to just have one fee. You know, that's pretty simple. Thank you.
Can I just check, Brenda? When we're on a Prospect Fair, we've also got a sharing insurance cost.
For all stalls?
Yeah, if there are some stalls there that don't have the insurance to cover being there, the council had like it was $200 and then 5 needed it, it was divided up like 5.
The Prospect Fair,
Yeah. So I don't know, if we're not doing that anymore.
It's not indicated down as a fee.
Yeah.
I'm aware that under Prospect Road events that Carolyn actually suggested that in fact the public liability insurance, which this year was a fee, next year is not, and the reason being that she's encouraging they go straight to their own insurers. Right. So rather than being the middle person, and so the fee is actually removed.
Yeah. Well, it's not removed because it says nil.
Mm.
That's what the register in front of me says here. Public liability insurance, $0 or $. To be technically correct. So can you just tidy that up?
Good point of clarification.
You should take the whole line out or put a note in saying must be by.
It's a good pick-up. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Just coming back to these fees, whenever we've had a report on the sponsorship, that is the funding that's come back to council to mitigate our cost, I don't ever remember seeing anything relating to $850 for each, which as a mitigating fee, I'm just surprised that hasn't been shown anywhere. I've never seen anything that I remember that has listed any money that we've taken in on that basis. But we do for sponsorships.
What was that for actually?
If people are paying $850 as outside vendors to come into the city, I've never seen that shown as a separate item in any of our costings. I've always seen the sponsorship money coming in.
Mark's already asked the question about seeing, getting a report on it. Mark's already asked, can we see a report on how many outsiders come?
No, not that. And it's the reporting of the funding. In terms of governance, money coming into the council, I haven't seen it reported anywhere.
I'm sure I have. So I'm not.
In the report?
As in the fees from stallholders.
It will be from the traders fee. It will be lumped together with the within boundary traders fee. It will be traders income.
So what Mark's asked for what?
But not showing separate as
No, not showing separate. It will be all income from the traders.
So if there's 50, then you say 50 times $800.
Actually, just asking where it's been reported.
Yeah,
Check that out, just to be sure.
I'll check that out. Yeah, if it's been included, I would have thought it would have been separate, and I hadn't noticed anything separate. David says he has, so it must have been.
We'll just clarify that. We'll email it out.
I'll absolutely email it back to.
Yes, you would.
It doesn't show up in the sponsors' income.
No, I'm sure, yeah. I just hadn't noticed that anything referring it as a separate fee outside.
Future fees for all.
I know.
Any further comments on the fees?
In relation to a fee that's increased above CPI, the charge for a certificate of title has increased from $25 currently to $33 proposed. Basically, we were previously or currently only recouping the cost of ordering the certificate of title, so the increase covers some of the administrative cost accounts when retrieving that. So we're actually undercutting the LTO. So we've increased it accordingly.
Mark, is it possible when it comes to council that we can have last year's fee next to the column?
Chris?
That's the intent.
Yeah, we used to present it to the workshop and then we take it off to the council.
Yeah.
We include that. So the intent is to report to the next council meeting. Is everyone happy to do that? Okay. We'll move on because we've got to get on to rates modelling, which will take a little bit of time to go through.
Yeah,
so
no, it won't take.
it won't take time. Okay. That's confident.
It will take our 20 minutes. Okay, we have now received all our valuation data. So we are now, we will show you based on what is our current valuation. We worked with our champions the last 2-3 meetings with Councillor Dixon to help guide us. What are we presenting? What are we looking at a range of minimum rates? So this is some of the models that we have come up with that elected members may find it interesting. I'll hand over to Chris. One level of comfort is our actual data presents the more than 50% of our average residential has an increase of 4.4%. That is what we're communicating with the public. So I'll hand over to Chris.
Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, as Jenny mentioned, we've received our full valuation data now from the Valuer General's office. Working with that data, we are still receiving small weekly updates, but we've been advised verbally from the Valuer General that it's unlikely we'll see much change with ours anymore now. I'll start working through the slides. So a couple of weeks ago, we met and we settled on what was considered at the time Model G, where we took at that time was 0.55 growth, and we looked to reduce our increase to our commercial and our residential rates. At the moment we're out for public consultation, and our public consultation document includes a minimum rate of $1,025, which is a target of about 22.5% of residential rate, and giving us also an average residential rate of about $1,606. To know the targets that we talked about as far as the actual increases, you will note here that I have updated the growth. Our growth currently sits at 0.58, and as I touched on before, we're unlikely to see too much. So when we did these valuations, or we did this modelling for you back in April, we were using the valuation data from 2013-14. So what we actually adopted last year and did our rates billing on. So now I'll give you some information as to what our valuation data looks like this year. Seen some small increase in valuations overall, about 1.9%. One of the pleasing things to see is I know councillors like to see been wanting to see the vacant land become actually developed. And we've noticed 18 properties, so that's almost 20% of our vacant land properties from last year have actually become developed this year. So most of those have moved across to our residential area. And as I touched on before, growth is 0.58 so far. So just comparing 13-14 with what our data now looks like. So our valuation data, because we've had those 18 properties come into our residential area, it's really pushed up the number of properties that we need to get to in order to achieve our 22.5%. We've had to increase our minimum rate by another $5 from what we talked about back in April. And it's also increased the average residential rate as a result up to about $1,614.
Sorry, just on the average residential, is that a $15 increase only in the average residential rate?
Correct.
That is based on the model that...
No, sorry, that $15.99 is actually what we were consulting with. So it's a $15 increase from our consultation, not. So that figure is correct. Yeah, that figure in there is actually correct.
You, at some stage, provide the right one to us.
So the 980 is correct. 980 is our current valuation, so current minimum rate, and those rates on the dollar are our current minimum rates.
1531. 1531 was our last year's figure, so
83.
83.
83.
Yeah. Should be 31.
So what we did when we met with our champion a couple of weeks ago was we looked at what the implications of the minimum rate would be. So as I touched on before, we looked at increasing it by $5 to still achieve our 22.5%. But we also talked about what the implications would be should we increase it by another $10 or possibly $20. So I did one done modelling, and as you can see, the average residential rate doesn't really move a great deal. And the reason for that is that, as you can see down the bottom here, we're reducing the rate in the dollar in order to actually reduce the, still achieve the same outcome. And that again flows on to, as we've talked about previously, our vacant land is charged a 25% loading over there.
I'm just really concerned about our commercial costs, charges. They're horrendous.
What the second?
Yeah.
Commercial.
I mean, it'd be different if commercial was doing great guns, but it's not. Retail is doing terrible. And the landlords aren't paying these costs. The person who's renting the businesses are paying these costs. And they're the ones who are actually struggling, not the landlord, but the person who's actually renting the properties. I think our commercial is just one of the highest in South Australia.
So the commercial rate modelling that we're presenting here has got no changes from when it was presented back in April.
I understand that. So I'm just, well, there's forcing the same thing in that. I'm forcing it again.
Just before you go on, this is something you all know I've really been pushing to get our minimum rate up, and it's been I've been at it for 10 years, and it's only recently it started to move. I'm of the opinion if we leave it at 130, which is an increase, it's only slightly above the residential increase, 1% difference, and I guess I'm trying to get it pushed further up. So. Because right now, that increase is just over, if you take the middle one, 1,040, that's what was it last year, 980? $1.10 a week to get it to 1,040. And it just starts to get people, remembering these are mostly flat dwellers, it's not as though they're poor people living in $300,000 houses. The vast majority are in apartments. And there really needs to be a minimum amount people pay to be part of the Prospect community. So I think 130 is too low. I'd much rather see 1,050, but I'd certainly prefer to see either 1,040 or 1,050.
and literally it's $1 and a bit a week, a low bit, up on what they currently pay.
Doctors visit every 7 weeks under the new scheme.
Well, you never know where that's going.
So what that impact would mean that is the residential rate, you can see that it will decline. So as the minimum rate amount increases, the residential, that is the impact of that.
And the rate in the dollar, which is the thing that really annoys me every time I look at our list, Prospect sits above so many. These are the things, we've dragged it down a bit by hitting the vacant land. That's helped a lot. And getting the minimum rate up to, say, 1,050, you can see on the residential rate in the dollar, it's dropping us back. Now, you know, a slight twitch and we'd actually be down to 0.0031 rather than keep rising every year. So I'm of the opinion that it should be 1,050, which is an increase of 70. So, you know, $1.35.
We'll just ask actually the Minister there on that. So from to do the 51,
yep,
which then to increase that person about $10 or $15,
70.
Right. And so then the average residential, that's 27 cents. Is that how it works? Is it in the 68, 53 and 41 cents?
Yeah. There's a lot less on the minimum rate than there are on the other rate.
What I might do is I might just progress to the next graph, and it might help with some of the information that's flowing in. So what this next graph is actually showing you is where people are sitting, so where their actual increases are. So the first bar is everybody who's expecting, well, is likely to see an increase of 3% or less. Last bar is 6% or more. So as you can see, we've actually got 55.7% of our people on the 4.5 or less, which is where we expected to see them, because we were talking about a 4.4% increase. The 5% here is actually our minimum rate properties. So we're going from current 980 and going up to 1,030 in this model. Some properties in there that will be caught somewhere that actually gone to the minimum rate because we're increasing from 20% to 22%. So they'll be somewhere in between, but in essence that's where your minimum rate properties are. If we continue through the slides, when we go to 1,040, you still get 63% under there, but our minimum rate properties have jumped up. And that continues on again with 1,000.
So the minimum will be in the 6% mark.
That's the impact actually, is that the minimum rate people, you could construe the poorest people, have the biggest rate increase. I know
it's been a case of trying to get, for years we let it slip. We got down to 16% at one stage.
I understand the argument, I'm not arguing against you, I'm just saying that's the impact of us putting it up.
It's not a case of continuing every year, it's getting it to a reasonable number rather than let it slip. But you can't just increase it by a huge amount to get there, so it's been a 10-year process. And I think if we go to, was it 24% on the 1,050?
Yeah. 23.
23.5?
23.2.
Okay. You know, we're a long way from what it could be. Under the Act, it can be 30%, so we're 35%.
35.
We're a country mile away from 35%, and I think it's a good figure then to hold on and don't let it slip. And the slippage occurred, as you remember, because of the way we were running the program. Every time we played with one figure, we inadvertently dropped the others. Yeah. So
I'm attracted to 2/3 getting an increase of 4.5 or less. That's a nice stat.
Yep. So that is option B.
Option C.
Yes. Yeah. So the minimum is greater than 6. Just make sure lesser number is aware of that. So that is $70 increase. Sorry.
Yes. So with that minimum rate, are we doing that? I just can't hold my head. Are we doing that with a fairly bigger jump than what our others are this time around, or are we just doing it more on a steady as she goes, the minimum rate?
That would be the increase in 14-15, so that would be the increase in the first year. I'm not sure what other councils are doing. That's the question. I've done the research to see what they're actually minimum rate specific. I've seen the data as far as what the average residential is. We're about this.
Yeah, that's usually what gets reported.
I haven't specifically drilled down to what people sort of.
Some of the outer councils are actually quite high because the value of their properties are so low. They have to slug a fairly high minimum rate. So there are quite a few of the outer councils up around these figures.
We can show, circulate a data of those councils of last year's minimum rate.
We looked at them already.
So I guess we're just looking for guidance. How do we frame the final end?
So you can just go back to option A for me, just the graph, the bar chart, sorry. Just want to see, so there's a greater than 6%, that shows, actually his head that keeps going in front there, just over 500, so maybe 600 properties receiving greater than 6% increase. You go to option C, jumps up to 2,300. So they're the extra ones. So there's still going to be 600 who aren't on minimum rate, but they're going to get whacked with greater than 6, but the balance of them are the minimum rate people.
And when you look at the next slide, you can actually see, so it's 2,004 properties on the minimum rate with the first two scenarios. Interesting to note that it doesn't actually change, doesn't actually capture any new properties by going over there.
Right.
Here you grab another 60 properties.
Oh, I see as well. Okay, okay. Yep.
And so our theory is that even though they haven't got a bigger plot and value of their capital property,
valuation is
they
lower.
are still potentially users of the same as like the residential rate.
Do that.
So that's the.
So if we go back to the 2000, the option C, 2050, so 2056 of that, greater than 6% is actually the minimum rate. Just so that the gap is 300.
And that gets us finally to where I think we should be. Thereafter, as long as we don't play that model that we used to use and we hold it at that, I think then we've finally arrived at a reasonable.
Are we more likely with the change in the development plan recently, more likely then have more living in flats and more on minimum rate?
No, should people live in flats? Maybe in apartments.
Oh.
Well, those sort of apartments,
pretty well look like.
those sort of apartments are likely to be way above minimum rate.
They'll be 400, 400 plus.
450 and above.
These are people in
330
or less, yeah.
This is more like green brick.
And they sell for a 220.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mark, and commercial. Oh, this is just residential, isn't it?
Yeah, just residential.
Minimums?
So just, Ashley's right. So the minimum, the valuation that would attract the minimum rate would be about 330,000. Our average residential valuation is about 487. So,
yep.
Okay.
Sorry, carrying on, Mark. What happens with commercial? Is there a minimum commercial rate?
There is a minimum commercial rate. I don't know which slide it's in. There's about 70 properties that have been.
There's some really small, like ATMs and those sort of things.
Commercial shops. And
yeah. And what is that? What is that rate? Is it the same as this?
No, the same minimum rate applies to all.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Commercial.
So there's general agreement for Model C.
Disagreement.
No? Okay. Done deal.
So we'll frame it.
Okay, now on that note, any other issues?
10 years in the banking.
Going forward.
Yeah.
We'll get to the next item and then we can.
So that's all you need for it?
That's all we need for Red Model. Are there any areas that you want to look at before we, this is how we will put it in the annual business plan now in terms of rates, because we've got one more week to go before we present you with the final annual business plan, subject to consultation, obviously.
You go. Right, so from what we know from what other metropolitan councils are doing, so we're sort of slipping down instead of going up.
Our average residential compared to other councils, we are right in the middle.
Oh, all right.
According to what was published in the advertiser, I don't know what is their final adoption. According to the consultation published in advertiser, that's what we were.
Probably lower middle too.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, don't get too enthusiastic.
But some of them lie through their teeth.
Well, but you got West Torrens gets $4.5 million out of Adelaide Airport every year.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, other councils have extraordinary rate
They
rates.
climb pretty low over us.
Marion Shopping Centre pays a little bit more than North Park, for instance. So for us to be in the middle is pretty good going. We, you know, unless something extraordinary happens, that's where we're going to be forever.
And what confuses it, some councils, the hamlet of Walkerville in particular, they add their rate increase and their growth and publish that figure, wacko, which is why they're getting smacked around the head by the press at the moment, because that's 7%. Their actual growth is 5.4 and a massive 1.6 growth. But they publish it as one figure, so
good luck to them.
Bruce wants to move on, so we better move on. Mark?
Sorry, just two things. One was it would be useful when discussed with council immediately after that for us to have a bit of a fact sheet for us as elected members.
Yes.
No, I think we had talked about that at the previous workshop of counselling, just so in terms of the messaging we're all kind of singing from the same.
Barbecue defender card.
That's
Let me
right.
check that.
Exactly right. And just put the cost of the Christmas parties on there as well. The second question, Mark, I'm sure whether you can answer this. I remember Scott put a motion up a while ago about pension concessions, particularly in terms of council rates. It's not on my radar where that's at.
So, yep.
What was that on? Pensioner concessions for minimum rates and the amount, the concession rates. Scott put a motion up.
yeah, and we got some figures. We got figures and we killed it off.
During
We
our
revisited it during Parliament back in April. It was one for
I'd like to miss you.
We blamed the state government and left it there.
Can I tell you,
I'll ask you one more if it's all good.
now that the journalist is not here, I'll give you a broader answer to that very, very sensible question. And I can affirm that the department who handle it have said that there will be no change to their policy settings. The Treasurer has said, well, the Commonwealth have cut the budget for concessions. Okay? So they're looking at it in the state budget. The LGA has said, don't change it. I don't want to hear you see any reduction at all. The Treasurer said, well, you can raise your own rates. You've got some councils paying it already. Why don't you all pay it? My response was, we don't do welfare. Don't do welfare. Okay? Because if we do, then there'll be 3 levels of government looking after welfare. So I think we've got to stay really strong on this one. And that the pension concessions come from the state or the federal government, they don't come from us. We do all sorts of other things. You know, community buses and club rooms and halls and parks and programs. That's what we do. Okay? So it is at risk.
Did you name us all when you said we?
Yeah. I didn't name you because I'm a bit worried about your health.
No, I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to
That
go.
what one would ask, but never mind. Mate.
You can in fact, I missed it.
So those comments do lead on to our next item. So if everyone's comfortable, we'll move on from there. Yeah? Okay. Next item is the impact of the federal budget. Jenny.
So those is self-explanatory. There's 3 levels of impact. I've also included the pensioner concession note as part of the additional information that basically reiterate what Mayor Lachlan said, that they are not looking to change pensioner concession at this stage. That was what was presented. So there's 3 issues that will affect us. First is the cut to the special local road grant. So we have been receiving, we have 88,000 in our budget next year and from there on. So that's the first impact. Second impact is the freezing of the financial assistance grant. In our budget, we budgeted a 1% increase, which is a very conservative budget, but nevertheless, that is not going to happen. There will not be any increase of that grant, and that costs us about $8,000, about $7,000. So that is just it's not a big amount. So 88 plus the 7. So these are the 2 challenges for us for next year's budget. But there's good news later. But the third impact is actually for this financial year, which is the advance payment of Grants Commission grant. So we have reported to the Audit Committee and Council to say that at the beginning of the first budget review, we are not adjusting the the Grants Commission grant, and that was recommended by Audit Committee. So now we just received a formal notification from LGA today that we will not receive the advance payment. What that means is about $335,000 we will present as an unfavorable budget in this year's budget. So that is, I think, an issue that has been reported. So how do we absorb the $88,000 and the $7,000? What we will do is we will refine our principal and interest repayment based on the PLAC timing. So we are going to look at we have in our budget, the draft budget, when we're going to draw down the funds for the PLAC project. So we're going to tighten up the timing of construction to see how we can adjust those. We are confident that we can cover the whole from that drawdown.
To slow it down.
To slow it down. We need to get a proper, because the budget actually is, we expect it to happen probably the first half.
The budget was actually predicated on the loan being drawn down on 1 July,
which
was unexpected. We're not actually expecting to do. But we didn't know the actual timing, so we just conservative line.
That has always been an assumption that we will need to rejig that budget. So we will have a firm timeline now, and then from PLAC and from Alex's team, so the whole loan repayment will be adjusted. So that has always been an assumption that we will need to draw from PLAC.
So hopefully the impact can be minimized as far as the budget goes.
Yeah. So it will be back to what we have gone out to consultation, which is close to $800,000 deficit. At least it will not be worse off. So that is the positive of that. So when we bring back the annual business plan to you, subject to consultation feedback, it will be very similar, other than these two adjustments.
David, you've been doing a fair bit of work with the LGA on all this stuff. Is there anything else we need to know?
Well, I mean, read it in the report, the freezing of the financial assistance grants will be a real problem. 1% to us, but for some regional councils it'll be a very big problem. Maybe a 4%, some are saying 10% cut in their grants for the year, which is pretty significant. The $88,000, I mean, the only way we're going to accommodate it is to slow down our expenditure. So in simple terms, we'll be doing $88,000 less capital works for our community in the next year because of the federal budget cut. I've made it pretty clear to the Assistant Minister and to anyone else who's been in contact that we're the only state to have had a cut. No other state has had a cut in their local grant funding. We're the only ones. And they cannot justify, because I've asked them to, cannot justify why South Australia should cop a cut, but not New South Wales, not Queensland, not Victoria, not Western Australia, and certainly not Tasmania. I can go through them all. We're the only ones. Okay, so we're still pursuing that. There is some very small chance we'll get it back because they're quite embarrassed about it, but don't hold your breath.
Is there any reason?
No, there is. Sorry, what's their reason? That it is.
The only state government
You have to go back in history to work out why they have chosen just us. And the reason is there was a local grant fund set up many years ago. It dudded South Australia in the formula. We were getting 5.5% of the money. We've got 7.6% of the population, 11% of the nation's roads here. So we said, or my predecessors, that's pretty unfair. You've got to recast that. They didn't want to undo the base formula, so they added a supplementary fund, which brought us up to 8.3%, which was the Roads to Recovery percentage that we granted. So it married in with the same percentage. That supplementary amount next year is worth $18 million. They've just cut it. So they're saying they've cut the supplementary program, they haven't cut the local road funding program. We're saying you're playing ducks and drakes. It's pretty obvious it's a cut. It's only to us, because no other state had a supplementary grant to bring them up to speed. So the reason is it was easy for them to just cut it without disturbing the basic formula. So we're taking a deputation to see the Assistant Minister and the Warren Truss, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Infrastructure and others during the National Congress, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So he's had it between the eyes from everybody, but we'll be taking a South Australian delegation there again, saying it simply means there'll be $88,000 less spent on our local roads. Just us. Think about the whole $80 million less money on the roads in the state. That's what's happening. I can't add any more.
My old waitress used to say, but the microphones are on.
Yeah, best you don't say.
Well, I wouldn't mind if every state had a cut. At least then you'd say, okay, you're shifting money from local roads to your national highways program, like South Road. That's just a decision of government. Fine. You're the blue guys, the red guys got chucked out. I get that. But just to cut South Australia and nobody else, how do you justify that? So, I mean, we could kind of say, oh, bad luck, but I'm not.
Ginny's got another
Just
comment.
one final comment about the 1% tax grant. Even though we say 1% is 7,000, but that impact of reduction could be more than just 7,000, because they say that there's no, my understanding is no per capita increase, but if as a population increase is less than the rest of the country, when we divvy out the per capita, that impact could be more. So we will not know until we get notification of the funding. Just to flag that may be more than 7%, but
The LGA's asked for that mapping to be done.
yeah. So that could be, for us it's not as significant, but for other councils, they are now reframing their budget, some to the tune of 300,000-400,000, like for Mitcham Council. So they are reframing their budget this hour.
Okay.
That's all we have for this item.
Okay, so that will finish that item off. Now we can just go into open discussion. I've just got one comment to make, and that is that the slide has been fixed. Yay, Moora Garden, so that's really good.
And concreted underneath or whatever.
I haven't seen it. Alex, do you know anything?
I haven't seen it either, no. But
6 months?
No, I haven't.
Well, when I was there, is it
Grouted underneath?
I believe it is. I believe it is. We haven't up into the-
Yes, it is. It is. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
They still had the tape there when I was there. Forward, the slide had been fixed. The tape was still there. Was that the reason why the tape's still there? I don't know if it's gone today, but it was there today.
I'm pretty sure that it's gone today, but I can,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was there the other day. The tape was still in, but it had been fixed.
Still there Saturday.
It's still there. That's what I'm saying. It was still there.
And Sunday.
Yeah.
We don't want to play on the weekend, because that's when it gets damaged.
That's true.
During working hours?
I understand, yeah, that's correct, yeah.
We'll just make sure.
Because it was trying or something like that.
No.
Why was the tape still on it after it had been fixed?
Commission of inquiry about why the tape was still there.
Yep, noted.
We'll just chase up. But I thought it was good news about you got the parts put in place. So,
Have we got any spare bits?
See another light's gone down here.
But that light that wasn't working was working last night.
which one are you talking about?
Well, in Vine
By
Plaza.
Chibo.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there were 2 lights working there last night. All the lights were working there
Yeah,
last
but
night.
it's on a
there's one-
cycle. It's got some different bit of software in it that's just changing colours continually.
So just to remind, I did talk about this.
No.
I did talk about this at a previous workshop. So at this time, you might explain it better than me, I think.
Okay. From what I understand is that, yeah, the actual circuit board needs to be reverse engineered, and we understand that's going to happen in China through Cortec, etc. So what they've put in place at the moment is just still an operating lighting system that unfortunately isn't synced with the existing blossoms throughout that chart area. But it is working. I haven't seen it, but it's good to have it back.
Nice.
We are getting the reverse engineering done on the circuit board.
Yeah,
Are we ordering several?
Once we get the engine,
We've got one, the rest cost $1 each, so we might as well
We should sell them. The other one you've noticed is
Yeah.
outside the play.
Across the road from the road, not outside the road, it's across the
We'll
road.
let Alex know because he's not here.
But the one on the other side of the road is not working.
yeah, so we're getting more parts.
I only saw it last night. So the one outside Maradi works, but the one across the road, one of them doesn't work. Wasn't working last
That's
night.
that one just
Okay.
said.
Yep. All right. Have a look at that as well.
Right. Oh, we've had a longer summer, so the floods are still going. I assume that's it.
Shall we move on? Move on. Anyone else got anything they want to raise? I know Ginny does, but...
Something Deb was looking at, but now of course departed.
Just left.
Under our alfresco policy, there's no smoking on Prospect Road. Under another policy, I can't remember what it's called, there's a limitation to smoking in and around council buildings. And this area to the side fits sort of both of those, as I've explained once before. So it's alfresco down the front, but for Chibo, if somebody walks around the corner, but onto council land, suddenly they can smoke. And I would have thought that just shouldn't happen. A, we shouldn't give them an advantage, but B, it's on council land and there is prohibited
amount of areas in which you can smoke on council land. And I think that, now I thought that had been excluded from a smoking area, and Deb was looking it up. But if not, it should be. You shouldn't have an area where you can walk around a corner onto council land and pull out a cigarette while you're al frescoing, but not anywhere else. It's just that...
I can dress it up, yeah.
Yeah.
They actually charge Chibo rent for that land. They're using it.
I'll dress it up.
I don't know the answer to that question myself.
Off the top of my head, I mean, we'll take it on notice and look into it further. The no smoking around the council building applies to staff only, as I understand it, so the community can still smoke. The outdoor dining areas, they're restricted, but Chibo predates the establishment.
Absolutely, and then we need to update it to bring Chibo into that, because it's just dumb to have that one little slot that they can smoke, particularly if it's on council land.
Number places are predate. Yeah. Let's not get caught again. What you found is a loophole in the outdoor dining smoking conflict, right? But we should make it citywide, not because last time we said Prospect Road, but there's Minestra and there's
Chibo's still got the
Coffee Barons on private land. I think there's outdoor tables on their landing.
That's on their own.
But there might be the subway on the northeast road. I'm not sure. Wherever we've got outdoor dining permit, should we just have a policy that you can't smoke within an outdoor dining permit area?
Is it Adelaide that's going to bring that in, or Melbourne?
2016 they're talking about Adelaide.
Right. They're making it no smoking at all in any al fresco area.
Yeah, we're ahead of them. We've only got two or three little areas.
I just don't want to get behind them.
Right behind them.
So we'll find some information. Bruce has asked the question about do Chibo lease the outdoor dining area.
Question though.
If they do, get charged a fee.
Yeah. And are we charging the fee?
Yes, we are charging the fee.
I want to know how much.
We don't know here, but we'll find it.
Yeah.
$37.52.
Yeah.
We'll find out that figure and we'll email it out.
But let me know, have we been charging?
The difference between Adelaide City Council and what we charge Chibo compared to...
Have we been charging all of the al frescos on Prospect Road?
Yes.
Always been a bit shaky, because the first year we forgot to charge them.
Well, Melbourne's another way.
Okay. Any other questions before we finish up?
Oh yes. At the front of St Helens Park, that thing that used to be out the front here, the big round, what's it called? The big round mosaic thing.
Yeah, that's up at St Helens.
The big round, that's it. Totem.
Call it a totem.
We took the sign off it that showed where the council building layout was, and what it was going to be was some other reference, I think, to the building that used to be there, and also the current stables, the heritage listed stables at the back. It's still, after 3 years, which people occasionally put cigarette papers or stuffed street papers in.
That was brought up at one of the carts.
Yeah. And brought up
And that was supposed to be in the budget.
Yep.
Done in the budget.
So I assume it'll be done by June 30th then?
Yeah.
See ya.
Look at that. Look at that for sure. Yeah. Final thing from Ginny?
Yep.
Yes, just that last item.
So we have started our election promotional campaign by writing to all our residents, business owners. So about 5,700 letters will go out this week just to encourage them to re-enroll for the election. So as a result, these are
5,700. I wish.
About
600
people that are on a voter's roll for council election, so they're not necessarily on the state election roll, so they get captured by us.
So they are tenancies, business, yes, plus rental properties, tenancies.
Right. Not just
no.
Landlords who...
Landlord that live elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's right. So what we're trying to say is we have a budget for next year's budget, but these are some of the costs that we have to incur this year. We need to incur them, and we may or may not need to come to you through a budget review if there are some savings in some other areas. But whatever we spend this year will be reduced from next year's election budget. So we do have about 70,000 all up, or 80,000 all up in next year's budget. So this is just to let you know we may or may not need to come
Because
here.
we've commenced the process.
Because we
of
have
doing
to commence the process, we perhaps should have budgeted a bit this year and lesser next year. So we have commenced the process and for brochures, etc. So the letter will go out end of this week, to 5,700 postage the lot.
Most councils really struggle to get this to have any traction. And can we just have a think about how we get it out there? In terms of even the envelope, if it says, a friendly message from your council, I can imagine what most businesses and landlords will do with it. So can you just think about how it's worded, how it's presented? I mean, if it was a political campaign, I'd strike the fear of goodness what's into them to say, your rates are, at risk, or your bylaws are going to, impact on your business. Get in there and make sure you have a say. It's so passive the way we do it. And when we go door knocking, as we all do, they all say, well, hang on, yeah, I'd like to vote, but I haven't got any ballot papers. Can I get some? No, because the roll closed weeks and weeks ago, and this business and non-resident ratepayer roll closes even before.
August.
So you've got to try and get them enthusiastic in July about an election in late October. It's really hard work. So
when are nominations?
September. Well, most of these people won't see the magazine though, see, because they're not living here or their businesses. So the letter needs to give them a compelling reason to give a toss, basically.
We also have a communication strategy with this election. Maybe we can bring it to the workshop. It was the intention to actually come and discuss at one of the workshops.
Yep.
Other the next workshop, it has been earmarked on one of the workshops.
Yep. And is this going in the rates notice envelope or a separate envelope?
This is a separate.
Okay.
Separate.
Could you think about another little one of those lightweight things in the rates notice as well?
Going up the range as well.
A separate thing? Yeah. 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 Good.
Yeah, there is quite a few stages that we intend to promote this, but yeah, we'll check the envelope, but yeah, we do have stickers.
When does the business have to be registered?
August, I think. I don't have August. I don't have the date. The 8th.
August the 8th. Yeah, beginning of August.
So they have to register by then, August the 8th.
That's why we need to get the letter out.
And finally, can you give us a copy of that that campaign specifically, so that we can contact the people we know to say, pull your finger out and add it.
A copy of the letter?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And our Facebook, our Twitter site, our online
They're
panel.
all on our, Yep.
I went round with the last elections when we had to, and a lot of them didn't even remember getting the letter, and one of them sort of think, I think that's something that they hadn't even opened the envelope, because they're so busy with their business.
And no matter what you do, we know 70% of them are voting.
No, that's true. But I think we only had 110 vote last election. Really low numbers.
Can I just finish? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, almost the same, because it made me think. I discovered, most of the other people knew, a thing called iCloud on my thing, and I found some messages on it because I couldn't get pictures. And bloke that used to work here, Justin, his name was, he's gone now. He tried to reply twice to me, or he didn't reply at all. But the question came through here about the fact of the Prospect Review that didn't come over to my side of the road. Remember the Christmas one come after, the Prospect Fair one come after. I hope this last one that says we're finished doesn't come after the election. But he was going to get back, he was going to get onto Australia Post and do 100 different things. But he's cut down there.
This is Chris. This is the Prospect magazine.
Could I? This is a big problem across Australia Post, and I met with my president hat on, Kay Mousley, the Electoral Commissioner. She is really unhappy about the service they get as well. And putting my political campaign hat on, the State Secretary, even more unhappy. They're becoming quite erratic in their deliveries that are the cheaper ones. So we do with it, it's called the unaddressed direct mail or something like that. It's UMS or something. It's not the 55 cent. So there's a cheaper version, but the guarantees of our next day delivery just aren't there. So the service level is appalling. I wondered, Mark, whether we could think of an alternative as a fundraiser for service clubs and anyone who we deem worthy of getting our money. Why don't we ask like the Scouts or Kiwanis or even the schools, do you want to deliver our magazine? We'll pay you at a rate of the equivalent, and Doug Australia Post altogether.
I've done it for through school for the phone book.
Yeah, the same sort of thing.
So you just get people out and you do it, and then you raise money for
I didn't write my article in the phone book.
Because it is a big cost with Australia Post. So.
Come in February.
Yeah, it's a decent, and I reckon that'd be good money for local clubs. And you have to write some rules around it so that they don't become as unreliable as Australia Post.
Australia Post problem, David, though, is the guarantee of next day. That's not a concern. I mean, what are they doing with them all if they're not delivering them? That's got nothing to do with the delivery.
I can't answer that one.
But there's no next day delivery promise unless you pay for it.
Well, sure, but we don't need next day delivery. We need,
We're talking weeks of delay.
Christmas one. Have we spoken at a CEO level to?
I haven't given them a call myself, but I think, David, your idea's got some real good merit. It is a good opportunity to keep the funds local.
Even if the service clubs combined and
we'll follow that up as an option. Now, anything else?
No, just a reminder, tomorrow we have a focus group meeting. So we have 20 and the mayor will open it for us. Focus
yes.
When is tomorrow?
Tomorrow is the focus group, the paid session. On Thursday, I invited myself to the Residents Association to talk to them about budget, so it would just be myself. And next Saturday, we will have the public meeting at the
library. Yeah.
That is the
So you've got those notes ready for me to talk to the focus group that actually said the minimum rate's got to go up by $70. And
we will have some headlines.
yeah. The public meeting is next Saturday?
Saturday at the library.
$1.30 a week.
David, can I have your 4-pound chicken?
before we close, I'll give my apology for next Tuesday's work.
So now that
And mine as well.
I'm in New Zealand.
Study tour.
So you, mate?
And $1.40.
Just next week?
we go to 1050.
Okay. I think we've pretty much finished. Anyone else?
Just one last thing about the Prospect magazine. I've received articles from most but not all of you. So
I thought it was too late.
it's too late.
That's what I thought. I missed the deadline.
Is it too late
Most
to
but
go
not all.
home tonight? People change your mind?
Too late. We will edit it. It's being edited as we speak.
My whole 11 words that I'm over.
You can flick it to me and I'll see if it can be incorporated, just that
Well, I
little
might
change.
just take it out. That one.
Send it to me. I'll forward it on to the...
So we know that we've got our...
Yeah. Okay. We'll finish the workshop there. Thanks very much.